Hi, welcome everybody to the Middle Bible Podcast. This episode today is one of my favorite topics. It is the topics of dinosaurs in the Bible. This is something that a lot of people will say disproves the Bible because dinosaurs aren't mentioned in the Bible anywhere, and therefore the Bible isn't true. First of all, let me state that even if we could find no dinosaurs in the Bible, that doesn't mean that the Bible is not true. There's not a single book on planet Earth that contains all information for every single topic. There's no history book that contains every single amount of history that ever happened. Okay, that doesn't mean that it's not true. But luckily for us, we do find dinosaurs in the Bible. In fact, if you open up your Bible to Genesis 1, you will find them, and if you read Hebrew, you'll find them pretty quickly. So you go to Genesis chapter 1, right here on the screen. It says Genesis chapter 1, 1, verse 21. In your English, a lot of times it'll say, and God created the great whales or the great sea creatures. Okay, now this Hebrew word here is actually the word tanin. Okay, say it with me, tanin. All right, so tanin, we look at the Strong's Concordance here. The actual translation of this, the proper one, is dragon, serpent, sea monster, dragon, or dinosaur. Okay, so within the first 21 verses of the Bible, it says God made the dinosaurs. Okay, but even if that was not enough, that's not the only time that we have them here in the Bible. Luckily for us, there are a ton of these. So today we're going to talk about how dinosaurs fit into the Bible. Into the biblical worldview. I myself, I'm a young Earth creationist. I don't apologize for that. If you are not, that's okay. You know, if this stuff is not convincing to you, that's okay. There are plenty of very faithful Christians who are old Earth creationists and do not believe this and have different views about the things that I'm about to show you. But we're going to talk about the Bible, we're going to talk about history, and we're going to talk about science. Okay, because I like to attack it from all ends. Yes, I believe the Bible is sufficient and it is the Word of God, and that's all that we absolutely need. But that's not all what everybody else requires. Right? If you come into an argument with somebody, you use the Bible against them, they're not going to really care what you have to say. So I like to use things outside of the Bible as well. So, you got creationism. For some reason, we got this meme on the left that has Sarah Palin riding a dinosaur. You'll see a lot of these because it's easier to read one book than to read a bunch of hard ones. Hard. But the next meme on the right here is one of my favorites. Because you got the guy on the right, what exquisite dragon remains. On the left, cool dragon rock. And in the middle, it's a dinosaur fossil, right? Because you got the soy jack in the middle crying and whining, which is what most of your atheists are gonna complain about. But that kind of tells you exactly where we're going with all of this, with the ones on the left and on the right. But dinosaurs are dragons. I'm going to show you them in the Bible first of all. After, even though Genesis 1:21 has that in there, if you actually go and you do a word study on tanin, it is in the King James Bible almost 30 times. And you'll find a lot of the time in the more modern translations that you have people that translated this word as things like ostrich or jackal. But the actual proper translation is dragon. It makes people uncomfortable to talk about dragons because they don't realize, hey, wait, dragons are just dinosaurs. Ancient people said that they lived with these creatures. Every single culture on planet Earth says we lived with these beings, these giant lizard-like beings. We called them dragons. We killed them. We ate them. We were terrified of them. We made people into kings for killing them. But now we look back and say, oh, dragons aren't real. Okay. But in the Bible, we've got Job 40. He talks about two named dinosaurs in here. The first one is behemoth, right? And we'll go over what some of the old Earth creationists say this is and how that's just a silly argument for this. So look at behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscles of its belly. Its tail sways like a cedar. Okay, that part is really important. Sways like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are close-knit, its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs are like rods of iron. It ranks first among the works of God, yet its maker can approach it with the sword. Okay, if you were to think in all of the animal kingdom, what would be the biggest, most awe-inspiring creation of God outside of humans and like the human brain, which is phenomenal in itself? It would be like this: a sauropod dinosaur. The bigger ones before the flood would have been, the brachiosaur, gigantic ones. The ones after the flood would have been a little bit smaller, apatosaurs, and things of that nature. Uh, so a lot of people who don't believe in this will say, well, it's talking about a hippo, or it's talking about a or it's talking about an elephant. But if you look at an elephant or a hippo's tail, it doesn't sway like a cedar. It's a little dangly thing that just kind of flops around like that. It's very small. But a gigantic sauropod has a tail that sways like a cedar. Right? So the next one is in Job 41. So in Job, this is after Job has spent a long time complaining to God about God allowing all of these things to happen to him. The Satan character within the story is allowed to take all of these things from him, and he's really, really upset. So he spends a bunch of chapters complaining to God, and then right at the end of it, God says, okay, he actually says, gird up your loins, because I'm about to talk, basically. He says, he basically acts like he's about to go to war with him verbally, right? Because he's like, look, I'm going to prove to you that you shouldn't question me. And so then God lists all of these amazing things that he created. He talks about the behemoth, and Job knows what he's talking about here. He knows about this behemoth character. Okay, so then can you pull Leviathan with a fish hook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Leviathan is another one. Can you put a cord through its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it keep begging you for mercy? Will it speak to you with gentle words? Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as your slave for life? Can you make it a pet? Make a pet of it like a bird, or put it on a leash for the young woman in your house? Will traders barter for it? Will they divide it up among the merchants? Can you fill its hide with harpoons, or its head with fishing spears? If you lay your hand on it, you will surely remember the struggle and never do it again. Any hope of subduing it is false. The mere sight of it is overpowering. No one is fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has a claim against me that I must pay? Everything under heaven belongs to me. I will not fail to speak of Leviathan's limbs, its strength, and its graceful form. Who can strip of its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed above with fearsome teeth? Its back has rows of shields tightly sealed together. Each is so close to the next that no air can pass through. This one is a little bit less clear as to what it is. There's idea that maybe it's some sort of a water water dinosaur, something like this. Maybe there's not a sure answer for this. It then goes on to describe it as, it says that smoke comes out of its mouth, implying the breathing of fire. But that could also just mean that it is venomous, because anytime you have like fiery serpents or something like that, that is another word for it being venomous. So it's quite possible that it's just a venomous beast. It could be something like like this here, or it could be something like a Tyrannosaurus or something terrifying that Job would have known about. But it's obviously not something that we have today with the double double rows of armor and the shields packed together so tightly that you can't stab anything through it. Could be something like this, but either way, it's obviously speaking about something that we don't have today, something that is incredible, something that used to be alive when Job was written, and it's quite possible that Job was one of the first books ever written for the Bible. It's possibly one of the oldest, but we actually don't know the full date of Job because there's no real indications within the story itself. But however, that's just in the Bible. Again, if you go back and you look at all of the times that Tanin shows up, look up the word, do a word search for the word dragon in your English. Okay, if you have a more modern like ESV or NASB or something like that, you're going to find it less. You're going to find things like ostrich or jackal. But if you go and you look up, I'd suggest the Blue Letter Bible app because it has a really good way to search through the Hebrew and the Greek. It's really, really easy. That's one of my favorites. And then you can just do things like go through and look at the various words. So you can go through and look here. It'll show you dragons 21 times, serpent, whale, sea monster. So the real translation of this is dragon. And, you know, it pops up quite a few times here. We've got all of these right here. I mean, this is every time that in the King James Bible that it shows up. So that's quite a few times. If you go and you read through those, you'll find a lot of really cool stuff. It talks about the Valley of the Dragons. It talks about dragon bones. And so the Bible obviously concurs with all of the other people throughout history in saying that they lived with these creatures called dragons. So then we move on to ancient dragon art, which I don't have time to put all of them in there because there's just so much. I'm just going to go through some of them. And some of these, you know, you might be able to explain away a few of them. But you can't explain away all of them. There's some that are just so dead on where it's just like, okay, this is ridiculous. You even have like some people who have tried to say that this is just something that has been in the back of the reptile mind, and it's just being brought back through dreams and all these. There's crazy reasons for why these things exist. As far as an evolutionary old Earth atheistic worldview, and it's just insane. Okay, this one right here. This is on the Temple of Angkor Wat. I've actually seen this. I've touched this with my hands. It's in Cambodia. When you go through there, they call this the Cambodian dragon. Or the Cambodian dinosaur, depending on who your guide is. Now, you know, it could be a stegosaurus. You know, you have some people say, well, look, these aren't connected here. Some people say this is a chameleon or something like that. Okay, well, let's discount that. What about this one? This is cave art from Native Americans. Excuse me, there is no way that you can find this to be anything else other than what exactly it looks like. Okay. This right here, this is a Mayan painting that has an obvious, I mean, it looks like straight out of Jurassic Park, right? It looks like one of the Utah raptors, the bigger raptors with teeth. You say, oh, it's a snake, but it's got some obvious teeth there, and it's very big. These are people all around it, and it's the size of these people. There are no snakes with teeth that are that big. It just doesn't exist. All right, so you've got these right here. This is some of the oldest art on planet Earth is from the Sumerians. I know instantly what people say, well, look, they've got like these feline types of heads and blah-de-blah-de blah. Okay, so first of all, we have no idea what dinosaurs actually look like because we just have their bones. We have no clue what their heads actually look like. I'm not saying that this is what the head of it would actually look like. That's not what I'm saying at all. But they saw something that looked like this. Because you got all these other animals down here, all these real animals, and they're like, oh, let's just make these fake ones with super long necks. And they don't just do it a couple of times, they do it a lot of times. And so this one right here, you know, you've got this is a seal that you would roll, right? And put it over some wax or something like that to imprint this onto it. This right here is called the water panther of the Native Americans. It's not a panther. It's got horns. It looks very dragon-like. It's got some snakes down there. Oh, this isn't the actual art of it, drawn with this boat next to it. This boat right here, and you got this. Look how big that is in comparison to this boat. Right? It's very, very large. So then you got these guys. This is Mesopotamian. They're standing on top of these dragons. You've got this old story right here of it's from 1614 of this dragon, right, and he's killing these people. Then you got this. This is a Greek version of a dragon, and it is very large. This is the Asian. This is some of the earliest Asian art depictions of dragons. Now, the Asian culture, if you look at the Asian culture, their culture is surrounded by dragons. I mean, you should know this because they've got all of the symbols of the zodiac or whatever, and then they've got all these like chicken and cow and ox and all of these things, and then they've got this dragon one, the year of the dragon on there. So they've got all these real animals, and then they decided to put this fake one on there. Why? For what reason? And why is it that they have the same things as every other culture on planet Earth? Now, when you go through Asian culture, and the further back you go, the more dinosaur-like these animals look. So as you'll notice, you'll start to see that as people get further and further away from when they were actually interacting with the various species of dinosaurs or dragons, that they were actually drawing them more like what we see as dinosaurs. And the further away they get from them, they start to look more and more fantastical. They start to develop wings, and they start to look more like the medieval version of dragons that we have in stories like Lord of the Rings and all those old stories. But those stories all come from somewhere, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. So here's another dragon. We got this one. We got two of them actually here. Three actually. There's one right here. So dragon back here and dragon right here fighting with each other. These are just ancient depictions, right? And so this one we got here. This is Marco Polo. Would draw. He in Asia. He drew pictures of these things, and we'll talk about the two-leg stuff in here in a little bit, because there's a lot of these that are two-leg, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit and explain what's going on, because you'll start to notice that sometimes you got depictions that are spot on to dinosaurs, and you got some depictions that are way off, and there's a very clear and easy explanation for this. Here's another depiction of that seal. As you can see it a little bit better here. It looks less feline here, but you can see also it's got this little flying creature right here that has kind of the same thing. So something's going on with the reason they have these heads, but giant. And you see here, these aren't cat-like feet here. This is something different. Okay. So you got this guy right here. He's standing on a dragon dinosaur right here. Here's another one. These guys are actually hunting this dinosaur. There's another cave painting of Native Americans. Obviously hunting a dinosaur. There's just no way around it. You've got a whole bunch of these things. This right here is the Nigersaurus. It's a depiction. It's quite early. St. David's Nigersaurus. It's got wings on it. And like I said, as you get further away, they start to look different. But it's a Nigersaurus. Yeah, this right here. This is on a priest's tomb, and it is two sauropods with their necks intertwined. Pretty weird. Right here is St. George and the dragon. We're going to talk about him here in just a little bit. So there's quite a few of these all over the globe, right? This next one, this is right here. This is African dragon, right, with the guy sitting on top of it. And this is a mosaic. And this is actually a very small portion of a very large picture. So this isn't even the centerpiece. This is like an afterthought to all of this. But this creature right here is very dinosaur-like. Right? Then you got these guys right here taming these things. You've got all these other real animals. You've got some bigger guys here. We'll talk about that. Possibly some Nephilim stuff going on here. Because these are very, very early depictions of people. Right? You got more of this. These are actually like kissing. There's a Stegosaurus looking one. This one here is Asian art. There's a whole bunch of these, and I posted these on Facebook, and you have people laughing, saying, "Oh, it looks like a 5-year-old did it." Except these are thousands of years old. Like this is old art that has been discovered. And this is a Protoceratops found in Asia, right? And this is another one right here, and it's very obvious that they saw these things, because when we go and we find bones, and you'll say people, "Oh, well, they just found the bones, and that's how they knew." When we find bones in the ground of dinosaurs, we don't find complete skeletons, like literally never, because they're all completely jumbled up, and they're usually not ever put together neatly, which is why when they first started discovering dinosaur bones, when they put them together, they actually got a lot of things wrong. There were some species that first came out that actually didn't exist, because they were species of bones from species of different animals that they were putting together. They just didn't know. Because what we find is we find mass tangles of dinosaurs, like all lined up together in very small areas. There's just a crap ton of them all mangled together, almost like there was a gigantic cataclysm that caused them to all be drowned at one time. I don't know. I read that in a book somewhere. Can't remember where. So there's another one. This is another Asian one. This right here and this right here. Look at these things. Okay, this is across the globe. Okay, this is one in Asia. This is one in South America. This is more of a Mayan. This is a dragon that some of them would even worship them as gods, right? If you go through the book, it's an apocryphal book. It's called Bel and the Dragon, and I highly recommend you read it. It is a very, very, very short book. Actually, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and look it up here real quick. I'm going to go ahead and read this to you real quick. I'll probably edit some of this. But we're going to go ahead and read this. Bel and the Dragon. So let's just go ahead and read this. Okay, so welcome back. We've got Daniel and we've got Bel and the Dragon. So we've got, you go down here, we're going to go down to this right here. It's very, very short, right? It's an extra chapter of Daniel, okay? Now we go to this and we read. Now this story is very old, okay? Now in that place there was a great dragon that the Babylonians revered. The king said to Daniel, "You cannot deny that this is a living God, so worship him." Daniel said, "I worship the Lord my God, for he is a living God. But give me permission, O king, and I will kill the dragon without sword or club." The king said, "I give you permission." Then Daniel took pitch, fat, and hair and boiled them together and made cakes, which he fed to the dragon. The dragon ate them and burst open. Then Daniel said, "See what you have been worshiping." When the Babylonians heard about it, they were very indignant and conspired against the king, saying, "The king has become a Jew. He has destroyed Bel and killed the dragon and slaughtered the priests." Going to the king, they said, "Hand Daniel over to us, or else we will kill you and your household." The king saw that they were pressing him hard, and under compulsion, he handed Daniel over to them. Okay, so in this story, this is the reason why Daniel gets thrown into the lion's den. Now, it doesn't matter that this is not an inspired text. It's okay. What it shows is that people were talking about these things, right? They were talking about them a lot, all over the place. Daniel and the lion's den, in this story, the reason he gets thrown into the lion's den is because he kills a dinosaur that they worshipped as a god. Okay, so that's a ton of evidence as it is. Okay, and this next thing I'm talking about, some people don't like talking about these. I'm going to explain to you why I still do. Because some people say, well, these are, if you go and you look these up, it'll automatically say these have all been proven to be fake. Okay. However, there's a problem with that. There's over 10,000 of these stones. Over half of them depict dinosaurs and humans interacting. Okay. Some even show humans riding dinosaurs. Now, these Ica stones, I want you to think about this. Okay. Somebody makes all of these. Before you even see them, they're very large. Some of them are really big. And in order to make 10,000 of these, it's going to take somebody 40 years if they make one a day. And that's if they do that and don't work or feed themselves or like this is 40 years to create 10,000 of them. If they do one a day. And you can see how intricate these are. What it would take. Okay, these were discovered before laser precision, laser drills and all that kind of stuff was created. So there's just the sheer number of these is ridiculous. There's a ton of these things. One collection has like 5,000 in it. I believe it's this one. You got this right here, dinosaurs. Right, I mean, the detail in these are astounding. And I mean, just look at the sheer number of them. Okay, there's a stupid amount of these. Look at this one down here on the bottom. This one right here, this one right here. That's huge. Okay, and here's the thing: if they made sakes, why did they only make half of them showing dinosaurs? Like, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. And you'll find people saying, "Oh, it's just proven to be fake." I don't buy it. I'm sure that there are fakes. I mean, I promise you there are. I have no doubt that there are fakes. But there are 10,000 of them. Somebody did not take 40 years to make 10,000 of these, and then finally, oh, look what I discovered, guys. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense, okay? Even Ancient Aliens talked about it. And Ancient Aliens is one of my guilty pleasures, if you will. I love that show. I've watched all like 20 seasons. It's garbage. It's stupid. But, there's actually a lot of, if you just kind of insert fallen beings into that, you get a lot of some of the truth out. So we talked about history, or we talked about the Bible. We've talked about ancient art depicting them. Now we're going to get into all of the ancient stories of these, because there are a ton of them. I can't go over all of them. I'm just going to go over a few of them here pretty quickly. But St. George and the Dragon is one of the most famous. It is the whole idea of saving the princess and the castle and from the dragon and all this kind of stuff. That's where this comes from. Okay, it comes from this story. Okay, so the story goes is George is traveling around and he comes across this town. Okay, and this town is being just there's a dragon that is just eating all of the things from the people. They're trying to appease it by feeding it livestock and all this kind of thing. And so they just so it won't eat the people. But then finally they offer up the princess to be eaten. So St. George is going and he's riding his horse and he comes across this woman who's crying. Who's the princess. She's telling him, "Oh, they're going to sacrifice me to this dragon." And George says, "Well, how about I just go kill the dragon?" Right? So you've got that's what he does. All right. So in Catholicism, people are made into saints. Okay? There's Protestants, we believe all Christians are saints. Catholic Church, they create saints. Okay, and the whole reason that George is a saint is because he killed a dragon. That's it. Like that's the whole reason. He was made into a saint. And the story comes from the Golden Legend. It's probably written a couple hundred years after the events. So this has been passed down verbally for a long time, for 100, 200, maybe 300 years, and then it was written down by this guy. It could have been written down by somebody else, but we don't have that. You find a lot of things about the saints from the Catholic Church within here, but this story is one of them, right? And so a lot of the earlier depictions of St. George show a dragon that looks more dinosaur-like. The later ones start to look more like your typical fantasy dragon, of wings and breathing fire and all this kind of stuff. All right, so this next one is one that I found over the last year and a half, and it is really cool. I really like this one. So this is Martha and Lazarus. Right? Lazarus is a French term for this creature. It's the name of this creature. And the story goes that Martha, the brother of Lazarus, and the woman in the Bible, whenever things start getting really bad for Christians, they, her and her brother, Lazarus, a guy who was raised from the dead, go and they go out to, they go to France. And they come across this town. And it's the same kind of story almost as George, a little bit. They're tormented by this dragon that they call Lazarus. And the story goes that she says, "Okay, if I can tame this dragon, will you all come to Christ? Will you all get baptized and join the Catholic Church?" What they say. It doesn't matter if this story is true. Okay? It doesn't matter if this is 100% truth. Not. That's irrelevant to this story. Okay, it doesn't matter if any of these are 100% true. Okay, what matters is that these people are talking about these creatures and they're describing this. All right, so this one, don't worry about the face thing right now. I know it's got a weird looking face. We'll talk about that because I'm going to show you something that's going to tie all the weird looking things about these creatures together and here in just a little bit. So in some of these, Well, when Martha first finds the creature, he actually has a guy in his mouth, which is why most of the time when you see the depictions of Lazarus, he's got somebody in his mouth because the poor guy was getting eaten. So, but the story goes that she used holy water and tamed him, and that's how she. All right. So this whole there's a town called Tarascon in France, but that's their whole name of their town is named after this creature. And every year, still to this day, they have a whole festival that is devoted to this creature. Right? It's painfully obvious that this creature that they're trying to describe in this is some kind of ankylosaur or nodosaur. I mean, from what they described, people would make drawings about them, right? And when they would make drawings, it would look different than this, obviously, because the people who were making the drawing had not actually seen the creature. And so there's a really good reason for all of that. Okay, I want you to look at this in the middle. In the middle is an elephant, obviously. But what you wouldn't know, all these other creatures that obviously do not exist, this is what people who had never seen an elephant, when they were told what an elephant looked like, what they drew it to look like. Does that mean that the elephant did not exist? Of course not, because we know the elephant. This is the same thing that goes on with all of these depictions of these dinosaurs. People that never saw them, because they were fairly rare, even in the time of Jesus, they were very rare. Right? The father of history, Herodotus, said that that you could find dragon eggs in India, and that they were very rare at the time. The dragons were very rare, but you would also still see the flying fiery serpents, which had wings like a bat, just a pteranodon, something of that sort, right? Josephus also talks about. Josephus actually tells us a story of Moses when he was in Egypt as a general, how he used ibis birds to attack pteranodons. And then Herodotus, who didn't know Josephus, tells us the same thing about these pteranodons. He tells us that the pteranodon's worst enemy is the ibis bird. Those two people didn't talk to each other. This is just something that they knew during that time. I've got a video that I want you to watch now that is going to tie all of this together for why we see weird things, weird art depictions of creatures that, like dragons or even other things. Because when people, a long time ago, when they had not seen a creature and they had somebody come and tell them they would go adventure and travel, and they would say, "Oh, I found this creature. Look, I found this whale, or I found this scorpion, or I found this," and they would describe it to them. Then they would try to draw it. This video is going to show you exactly what they actually would come up with, and it's insane.
From the real-world species. And this mismatch was compounded with any animal the artist had clearly never seen before. European texts from this period are full of hilarious attempts to depict far-off species, so let's take a look at some of the most inaccurate, bearing in mind it would be difficult to know what, say, an elephant would look like if you'd never seen one before. And speaking of elephants, they're a good place to start when it comes to inaccurate depictions. Medieval artists seem to struggle with the concept of the trunk especially, often rendering it in bizarre ways. Many illustrations also depict elephants supporting entire stone castles on their backs. Spurring from myths, elephants were mighty enough to carry around entire buildings. This is, of course, incorrect. Another large African animal medieval artists struggled to portray accurately is the hippopotamus, possibly to an even greater extent than the elephant. Most illustrations of hippos from the era are way off, with an assortment of aquatic traits like tails and dorsal fins actual hippos don't possess. Other depictions almost make hippos look like strange horses, perhaps due to misunderstandings surrounding the animal's name, which means river horse in Latin. Up next, we have the giraffe, an animal medieval artists portrayed with less frequency than the hippo or elephant. Compared to the hippo at the very least, some pieces of art actually get the giraffe's general appearance mostly right, emphasizing the long neck. Well, most of the time. Moving on to African predators, we have the hyena, an animal with rather inconsistent interpretations across different paintings. In some illustrations, the hyena features horns and almost resembles a carnivorous cow, while others are more dog-like. One curious trend is that in many images, hyenas appear to be consuming the dead. This is because of a common myth that the animals dug up cemeteries to eat human remains, a concept which is inaccurate. Moving to a different part of the world, another large predator which gets the short end of the stick in medieval art is the tiger. Far from the massive predatory felines of the real world, medieval tigers were small dog-like creatures lacking the animal's trademark stripes. Strangely enough, in many illustrations the tiger is drawn looking in a mirror. This stems from a legend that a hunter could steal a tiger's cubs if they distracted the mother with her reflection, as the mother would mistake it for her cub. A pretty grim legend, and one that would more than likely result in immediate death if tried on a real tiger. Diving into the ocean, the next animal worth touching on is the whale, an aquatic leviathan which rarely looks anything like the real species in medieval art. In most depictions, the animal looks less like what we know of as a whale and more like a giant fish, to the point where some versions are even covered in fish-like scales. Some whales in medieval illustrations go a step further away from the real animal and seem to have legs. Going further inland, one semi-aquatic predator medieval artists took serious liberties with is the crocodile, with many images of the animal looking borderline unrecognizable. To be fair, some illustrations at least look more or less like a reptile, while others really deviate from crocodilian features, displaying hair, paws, bushy tails, and short dog-like snouts. Then again, some of the drawings of crocodiles which don't include fur don't look all that better. Nearing the end of our list and truly veering into bizarre territory, we have the scorpion, another animal given fur and mammalian features without any clear explanation. There's something about giving a scorpion a non-arachnid face which makes it look so fundamentally absurd. At least some depictions give it more legs than a standard quadruped. Well, some depictions. At the very end of our journey, we have an animal you'd never be able to identify just by looking at medieval portrayals, the chameleon. Although in real life the animal is a lizard, medieval artists sometimes portrayed it as a horse-like organism, and sometimes more like a cat. In either case, one thing is for sure, it looks nothing like the animal it's based on. The error...
Alright, so as you can see, when people would draw certain animals that they'd never seen before, they would draw weird looking things like the scorpion and the whale and the crocodile and owls, and all of these things. So when you see ancient depictions of dragons or dinosaurs, if you will, that look off, that look weird, that doesn't look like a dinosaur at all, like the ones from Mesopotamia. Oh, well, it's got like this cat looking head. Okay, but the rest of it obviously looks like a dinosaur, doesn't it? So these people, anytime that they would make art of these creatures that they definitely saw, or at least somebody around them saw, they wouldn't get it right, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that that dinosaurs didn't exist with these people, right? So we've covered the history, covered the Bible, covered the ancient art depicting them. Now we're going to talk about the science. I know you're going to get, oh, you just don't understand science and blah blah blah. No, I completely understand it, dude. I'm not a stupid person. Okay, I understand it, and I understand your arguments for it. I do. They're just really bad. Okay, especially when it comes to this. So Schweitzer's dangerous discovery. This happened in 2006. So I want you to notice the headline. Who is it dangerous for? This is talking about when we first discovered soft tissue inside of dinosaur bones. Okay, soft tissue inside of dinosaur bones is something that should not exist. Period. I mean it. Period. It should not exist. But it does. 65 million years, and we've got fresh looking soft tissue that's spongy and retracts whenever you pull it. Yeah, so that's just ridiculous. Okay, but why is Schweitzer's discovery of this dangerous? Well, because whenever she actually released all of this stuff, I'll show you some videos of her in just a little bit. She actually says, I didn't want to tell anybody. Why didn't she want to tell anybody? Well, because when she actually did end up telling people, everyone called for her to be fired because they all know this can't be. It cannot happen. We know this. They know this. They still know this. Now they act like they've had to change their views because they know that it's 65 million years old. But let's read about this. All right. By all the rules of paleontology, such traces of life should have long since drained from the bones. It's a matter of faith among scientists that soft tissue can survive at most a few tens of thousands of years, not the 65 million since T-Rex walked. Hold on. Wait a second. 65 million years, but we know they're saying we know that this can't exist, but here it is. So we know that, but we know that it's 65 million years old, so we have to change everything we know. Now, this one's even weirder. It smelled just like one of the cadavers we had in the lab who had been treated with chemotherapy before he died. Hold on. They're talking about a fossil. A fossil is just a rock. Fossil is a rock. That's it. Now, all biological material has been replaced. That's what makes it a fossil. Given the convention wisdom that such fossils were made up entirely of minerals, Schweitzer was anxious when mentioning this to Horner. Why? Look at this. But he said, oh yeah, all Hell Creek bones smell. Wait! What? All these rocks smell like death. That's weird. So one day a collaborator brought T-Rex slide to a conference and showed it to a pathologist who examined it under a microscope. The guy looked at it and said, do you realize you've got red blood cells in that bone? Schweitzer remembers, my colleague brought it back and showed me, and I just got goosebumps because everyone knows, I want you to pay attention to this, everyone knows these things don't last for 65 million years. They all know it. They still know it. But now they've explained it away. Right? So, as we continue here. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of videos now, and I want you to pay attention, both of them. The first one is Mary Schweitzer on 60 Minutes after she first discovered her dinosaur fossil, or dinosaur soft tissue. I want you to pay really close attention to some things that she says, that they say, and then the assumptions that they make at the end. Okay, because even though they both are saying, "Oh yeah, no, we know that this can't last this long," but we know that it's 80 million years old or 68 million years old, right? So this is that's insane. Okay, and then the second video is going to be with Jack Horner. Now, Jack Horner is also in the first one. He is basically Mary Schweitzer's boss, and he is the guy behind the dinosaur. He's the guy that they put on Jurassic Park, right? He's the paleontologist for Jurassic Park. But he is offered $10,000 to do some testing on the dinosaur soft tissue that they found in 2006. And he refuses for some very funny reasons and some very funny admissions, because he just admits he's in a cult, basically. And that he's not a real scientist. Because scientists want to know the answers to all things, even if it proves them wrong, right? You would obviously want to know that. But he doesn't want to know that. So pay attention to what he says in that second video, because it's very interesting.
Paleo.
Hello, could I speak to Jack Horner?
Yeah, who's calling?
This is Bob Enyard with KLTT Radio in Denver, Colorado. That's Bob Enyard.
Yeah, let me transfer you over to his office. I think he should be in there right now.
Hello?
Hello, Jack. This is Bob Enyard with KLTT Radio in Denver.
Uh-huh.
How are you doing?
Good.
Jack, I sent a letter to Bob Harmon a few weeks back offering the museum a grant of $8,000 to do a carbon-14 date test of that soft tissue T-Rex you guys dug up. And he said he would forward that to you. And I'm wondering if you saw that or considered it.
Well, carbon-14 doesn't work on something that old.
I understand that, and normally we wouldn't expect to get soft tissue out of a T-Rex skeleton either, but sometimes science proceeds by crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and you guys might have other things you'd like to carbon-14 at the same time. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to raise a little more money, so that's up to $10,000 now, that we'd be honored to give you guys if you would consider doing that test.
Well, we can't do that test.
You can't do that.
No.
Do you mean the museum doesn't have the laboratory?
We certainly don't.
Okay, well, we're happy to pay the expense of having a lab do the test in addition to the $10,000 to the museum.
Do you know how carbon-14 works?
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I realize it's useless for anything over maybe 50,000 years or so. But I've done a talk show in Denver for 15 years, and there's a group of folks interested in science. Of course, that discovery caught their attention, and they thought, well, it'd be logical to do this, to just go ahead and do it, even though nobody would be inclined to do it, just like nobody would be inclined to look for soft tissue inside of a T-Rex.
Well, yeah, and, we're still trying to figure out what it is, what it's actually made of.
Right, exactly, whether it's hemoglobin or whatever.
Well,
Jack, is the amount too small that it's just not worth the consideration?
no, that's not it.
Okay.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what? You
I didn't want to tell anybody.
You'd be ridiculed,
Yes.
right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
What if I were able to raise more money?
No, the amount of money has nothing to do with it. Because carbon-14 doesn't work on something like this,
Right.
your results that you get could be all over the place.
Well, they should be infinity. It should be not datable. In other words, it shouldn't come back saying it's 25,000 years old.
Right.
It should be infinity. And so that'll be a worthwhile...
Well, infinity isn't exactly what you get.
Okay.
I mean, it's like trying to date a piece of concrete.
Right.
You have to have carbon in it.
Right. You wouldn't use carbon-14. Now, the skeleton is not fossilized. Isn't that true, or largely not?
Well, the bone is made of calcium phosphate. And like I say, we're still trying to figure out what the actual soft tissue is.
Right. And see, we were hoping that a test like this would just add another bit of scientific information that you would have at your disposal. And also, in that grant letter, we asked if it could be a blind test with 5 different specimens, and therefore then the museum could test 4 other specimens that you might want to have carbon-14 dated, and so you could put it all in the same batch, and those testing then will pay the cost of that. That'll be free to the museum plus the $10,000 grant.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from here.
Sure.
All right. Obviously, your group is a group of creationists.
Yes.
And the spin they can get off of it,
right,
doing it, is not going to help. Not going to help us.
Yeah. So even though it's just a scientific test, they're not asking for voodoo or anything.
It's not actually a scientific test. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Carbon-14 dating something with soft tissue in it. Jack, if I could raise $20,000, would it be worth?
I want you to notice that she said that she didn't want to tell anyone. Okay, the first thing to notice. Second thing, she pulled it apart. What did that do? It was almost like a rubber band. It went right back. Okay, that is not a rock. That is not a fossil. Okay, that is not minerals being replaced and creating a fossil. That is soft tissue. That is like, that's why people were so pissed off. Okay, that's why people wanted her to be fired, because that is obviously not 65 million years old. It is so obvious to anyone. Okay, it's obvious to you. Yes, you who's saying, well, you just don't understand science. No, you know for a fact that that is not 65 million years old. You know it. You're lying to yourself because you're in a cult. You're in a religion. Okay, that's fine. Just admit it. I don't care if you're in a religion of the religion of evolution. I don't care at all. But that's what it is. Okay. Whenever you deny things that are directly in front of you, and saying, "Oh no, but this is science." No, you didn't change. You changed part of something. You said, "Oh well, you know, when we get new information, science changes." No, what doesn't change is the established 65 million years old. Instead, you changed the known fact that things cannot last 65 million years old. As soft tissue. That just can't happen. You know that, all right? So and then we notice in the phone call, Jack Horner says that he refuses to do the dating method on the fossil. First, he tries to say, well, you know, we just can't do that because there's, you know, it doesn't work on something that old. And so he says, okay, yeah, I understand that, but we'll just go ahead and do it and do the test on it, do a blind test on it. And, you know, you can add 5 other things to it that you need tested, and we'll pay for that. And he ended up offering $20,000 for his research just to do a test. And he says no. And why does he say no? He says it very clearly, because that's not going to help us with the creationists. Oh, my goodness. Well, at least he's being honest. Not gonna help us with the creationists. What an insane admission, right? That's how you know you're in a cult, okay? If you go against it, you get fired unless you're able to explain away. And by the way that they explain this, the way that they explain all of this crap now is they will say that, they'll say that iron is what has caused them to last 65 million years, right? Even though that's an absurd claim, the way that they've done that is Mary Schweitzer put some material, soft tissue material inside of a controlled atmosphere, controlled setting, and put an iron solution on it, and then waited a year. Okay, and then she pulled it out after a year. It's like, oh, it didn't degrade as much as it would have had it not had the iron on there. Therefore, it can last 65 million years. That is absolutely the argument, and that is the evidence that is used. Okay, you can sit here and say you just don't understand science. No, that is the absolute argument. Okay? It's called the Iron Lady defense. She came up with that as quickly as she could because everybody was like, fire her, fire her. So anyway, speaking of firing people, this man right here named Dr. Mark Armitage. Okay, he is a microscopist. Who worked at Cal State University until they fired him for releasing dinosaur soft tissue and the data on the age of the dinosaurs, because obviously they're not 65 million years old. So he sued the school and won. Right? He won like 3 years of salary, and he ended up creating his own. He created his own research institute called the Dinosaur Soft Tissue Research Institute, and they do a lot of awesome, cool work. It's right here. This right here is from a dinosaur, and it is a bone cell. Right? This little thing right here is a bone cell. And I want you to look at all these fine little details, these hair, look at these follicles, right, that help propel the cell around. 65 million years. None of that should exist. First of all, the cell shouldn't exist, but it definitely shouldn't have any of the filaments or the little tiny hairs still on it, just as well as all of these things, right? We got this right here, Nanotyrannus osteocyte cell with all of the tiny little details on it. This is 2500X, right? This should not be here. Right here is a Triceratops frill osteocyte, another one. This one's a Nanotyrannus osteocyte. This is RNA-stained osteocyte. This right here, this one's pretty interesting. This is a Nanotyrannus tooth. Look at the serrated edges on this. This is tiny, tiny, tiny little things here that should not be there after 65. The details are what make it astonishing, because details, something 65 million years old is not going to be this detailed, period. It just isn't. Right here is called the K-Cops. Supposed to be like 140 million years old, I believe, 120 million, over 100 million years old, off the top of my head. And Dr. Armitage found some nerve fibers inside of one of these fossils that definitely shouldn't be over 100 million years old. Look at the tiny details inside of all of this. This should be wiped away. Okay, these are not 100 million years old. It cannot be more obvious. Okay, and then we got this right here. This is some creationists actually did some carbon-14 dating. And I want to make it clear, carbon-14 dating is still not entirely accurate, but what it can tell you is that there is carbon inside it. And let me tell you, you can have a ball of carbon the size of the Earth, and it would be gone in 50,000 years because of the half-life. Carbon. There should be nothing, zero, after 50,000 years, period. None. Okay? But here we are with all of these dinosaurs. And there's been, this goes all the way back to 1989 fossils, all the way up to 2011. There's been more since then, because ever since, nobody ever looked for soft tissue inside of dinosaur fossils before, because everybody knew that it couldn't be there. But now that people know that they can find it there, they're finding it everywhere. And when this first happened, they used to say that it only happened in very well preserved bones. But they went back and they did these tests on bones that have been sitting in a museum for 100 years or however long, long periods of time, and finding it, even though they were just sitting in a shelf somewhere, rotting away, they still found soft tissue inside of these things. So that theory goes out the window, because it can't be any of those things either, right? So if you notice, all of these have 22 to 40,000 years on there, and you might say, Caden, that proves that the Earth is not 6,000 years old. We'll get to that, because you also get the same kind of readings for saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths, and all of these other animals that have the same ecological time frame, because of what the pre-flood world was like. The antediluvian or pre-flood world is it was vastly different than the world we have now. Everything was bigger and better. When God created the earth, he created everything to last. It's why before the flood, you've got people who live, and Methuselah lived 969 years. Adam lived over 900 years. Noah lived to be hundreds and hundreds of years also. And even up to after the flood, you still get people that live longer, but it drops off sharply right after, because the conditions of the earth were much different before the flood. The very next topic we're going to go into is the flood, which encompasses all of this kind of stuff and the Nephilim and all of these cool things. But what I need you to know is the reason that we get these gigantic numbers like this, the 32,000, 33, 40,000 years, is because the earth before the flood, the oxygen levels and therefore the carbon, the levels of carbon in the atmosphere were vastly higher. They were exponentially higher. And this is a known scientific fact, that the oxygen levels were exponentially higher. And this caused everything, yes, everything, to grow much larger, all the way from little tiny bugs like ants the size of your fist and the size of hummingbirds, all the way up to the gigantic sauropods like the Brachiosaurus before the flood. After the flood, everything goes down back much, much smaller. But before the flood, you got 2-foot wide wingspan of a dragonfly. You've got a millipede that's the size of a 6-foot tall man. You've got rats the size of cars. You've got camels that are 10 feet tall that are found in Canada. You got 6-foot tall penguins found in the deserts of Peru. You have amazingly huge creatures of every kind before the flood. All of the animals before the flood were huge. All of them. Every single one. Yeah, the one you're thinking about right now? Yep. And its counterpart, that was bigger. All of them. Every single kind. They're called the megafauna. And they don't talk a whole lot about them. I've got a whole YouTube video on the megafauna on my YouTube channel, if you want to check that out. I'm going to be going into all of those things again because I love talking about the giant animal species. But before the flood, everything was vastly different. That's the short answer for all of this. We're going to go into a 2-month-long thing on the flood. So pay attention to the page. Pay attention to the podcast. We've got at least 2 live episodes that we're going to do. I've got another episode I'm going to do with another podcast that I'm going to be announcing soon. I've got another page that I'm doing a collaboration with. I'm very excited to talk about this topic with you of the Nephilim, which also encompasses the flood. I'm going to be spamming your page with all kinds of stuff on Noah and the flood, and all of the stories about the flood, all of the evidence for the flood, scientific, biblical, historical, all of these things. I'm going to go into as much depth as I can to where you are probably going to be tired of it. But this is a topic that deserves depth because it is an extremely deep topic. But the dinosaurs fit right into that, because before the flood, you got gigantic creatures like the Brachiosaurs. After the flood, you get the much smaller sauropods because they are different. Yes, dinosaurs were on the ark. How did they get on the ark? Because he took the little ones. Dinosaurs, all dinosaurs, even the biggest ones, whenever they were hatched out of their eggs, the biggest egg was about the size of a football. Yes, the biggest dinosaurs ever started out about this big. When you take baby ones on the ark for a year, you get much better results. What all of the animals were tiny little baby animals versions of all of the animals. A lot easier to take care of, a lot less poop to deal with, and we're going to go into a lot of that because there is a ton of evidence for all of it. But I thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast and this episode. I know this one has been quite lengthy. There's a lot of things to go over with all of this. I love this topic. The very last thing I want to show you is this right here. This is my favorite dinosaur. This one is called Dracorex hogwartsia. This is a dinosaur. Okay, it's like a Pachycephalosaurus style dinosaur, but they call it the Dracorex hogwartsia because it looks like a dragon. And why do they think that it looks like a dragon? Because it is a dragon. If you showed this to somebody from the days of Jesus or before then, or any time they'd say, "Hey, look at that dragon. It looks like this dragon that I saw," because dinosaurs are dragons. I'm going to make some dinosaurs or dragons shirts. Let me know if you would like to have some of those in the comments, because I'm going to make some dinosaurs or dragon shirts from the Metal Bible, because this topic is one that I love. Dinosaurs are dragons. They're in the Bible, and you don't have to believe that in the young Earth creationism to be a Christian. If this is too much for you, okay, you just don't get to ride any in the afterlife. You don't get to have dinosaur pets. You don't get, I don't make the rules. I don't set them. I'm just enforce them. If you're an old Earth creationist, you get to sit and watch people ride on dinosaurs while you're really sad about it. So I get to ride on the Dracorex Hogwartsia and have a pet Dracorex Hogwartsia, and you get to sit back and be sad in heaven or on the new Earth while I get to be smiling and running around with joy on my face. So, all right. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Caton, and this has been the Metal Bible.